Shangi Compagnie Top Show. Okay, now we do the 4 limitless contemplations, which are really important for everyone. We do them first in English and then in Tibetan so that everybody can understand these 4 limitless contemplations are everything that we are trying to achieve in our Buddhism in every way. So just let me let these people in. Can you let them in, Bern? Okay. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and from creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Sim chen dam che dewa tang dewe ju tang den pa ju chik dungal tang dungal chichu tang tra wa ju chik dungal me pe dewa tampa tang mindra wa ju chik nearing chak tang ni tang tra we tang nom chempo la ne pa ju chik. So everybody, today we are going to talk about, we're going to really talk about it, a tug of war between your habitual karmic imprints and your awakened path, okay? Because both of them are pulling. And I thought my own stories of experience are probably the best than other people's stories. But when the first story that I want to tell you before we start is of a young drug addict. Some of you might even remember the story that I helped many, many, many years ago, okay? But I think this story is the best story I could tell you for what I'm trying to explain today. So this young drug addict, she went from rehab to rehab to rehab. And eventually her mother, that I kind of knew, phoned me and just said, I do not know what to do with this child. No rehab. She was about 19 or so. She said, no rehab will take her in. I can't do a single thing with her. So I said, being as I am with my full family at that stage, will bring her to me. Give her a suitcase and bring her to me. So she brought her to me, this ragged child who'd been on the streets and who was absolutely, she'd had a few days of not having drugs, and I kept her with me for a week. Okay. So what she did during that week was she followed me around my house. She followed me to my prayers. She followed me when I was working and seeing people. She had to sit outside, but she followed me literally for a week. We cleaned her up. We got her some clothes. I taught her what I could spiritually. I really tried to help her. By the time her mother came for her a week later, she actually looked like a different child, I've got to say. And it wasn't me. It was actually the universe working through me to be able to give her this opportunity. Anyway, she was very excited. She came to groups. She enjoyed things so much. And she went and re-registered at school. She was going to do a matric again. She'd fallen out because of her drugs. She was really on her way to real beauty. And she used to come every week and all of that. And then one day she rocked up at a group and she called me and she said, Melanie, Hillbrow is calling me. I said, don't you dare. Don't you dare go to Hillbrow. I'm calling you on this side. Stay. We'll get through this together. But I had decided I couldn't possibly do her into my family again. I had to, that was enough. I wasn't taking her in again. But I said to her, but when she said Hillbrow's calling, and I'm especially saying that because maybe we can call the habitual karmic imprints Hillbrow's calling me, okay? Because especially how Hillbrow is today. But the point is, so I really tried to talk to her that day. Anyway, Hillbrow did call her and she went back to Hillbrow and she went back to her addiction and she left her schooling and she left her spiritual path and she overdosed and died. Okay, that's the story. I couldn't help her at that stage or anything. And then her mother phoned me after she died. All the prayers that I'd given her were on the table, and the mother said there was no wind at all in the room. But the day after she died, these prayers went flying around in the room. So I sat in my meditation and I said to her, yes, I suggest you take those prayers. I suggest you give service like you've never, ever given service. I suggest you use the little bit of wake up that I gave you to be able to go into a new life, because this is going to follow you with you. These are your habitual karmic imprints, and they're going to follow you from life to life to life. And I really shouted at her. Of course, I prayed for her for a long time. And of course, I don't know what's happened. Probably one day I'll get a child coming into me and saying, I remember you, or something like that, because she'll already be in the next incarnation. And let's hope that her karmic imprints are not so deep that it doesn't take her many lifetimes to clean up. But addictions are very easy to see the karmic imprints. Okay, it's very easy to see, but I'm more concerned, none of you are addicts, maybe some of you are shopping addicts or money addicts or whatever, but I'm very keen, and that's why I want your discussion today to talk about many other aspects, okay, of the karmic imprints. And that was just a good story for all of you. But I've seen over the years many different people in relationships, and they have insecure backgrounds, divorce, abuse, alcoholism, all those kind of things in their background. And then somewhere in their adult life, they meet a person, I've seen it with males and females, they meet a person who loves them. Not always does this happen. It just depends on what kind of karmic imprints you've got, but who loves them and offers them totally new imprints in their life: kindness, financial stability, being able to be a good parent, but not the physical chemistry that this person would really like. Okay, and I have this so often with people you can't imagine. Okay, I even remember one person that I was entertaining. It was one of the Jewish holidays, and I was actually entertaining, and she was here with her husband. And she caught me as I was going into the kitchen, this young girl, and she said she had 2 kids with a very nice husband. And she said to me, Melanie, I want to ask your advice, just out of the blue. I'd never counseled her or anything. She said, I just can't take him anymore. He's dull. The relationship isn't exciting. I just can't do this. I've got to go on another journey. And I said, why not go on your inner journey, which will be very exciting for you, rather than an outer journey of leaving the relationship and causing imprints in your children and everything, okay? And I want to say this because she actually didn't listen to me and left her husband, a very nice guy. But it's an important thing that we talk about this tug of war, because in terms of your karmic imprints, that is the universe offering you a chance to clean them. But when there is another passionate, abusive relationship or anything like that, there's a pull to that. There's really a great pull to that. And when we have that kind of pull, it's very difficult. There's a tug of war. And I watch how many times when I've helped someone with their awaken their minds, which Buddhism teaches you in a vast way, to go to that huge nature of mind rather than your human part of your mind. And that is a really important thing, because you have to work with yourself to find other things to do, which I'll talk about later, or when we have a discussion. You have to find other things which stop pulling the Heelbrow call and start getting you back into abusive relationships and all the kinds of things in childhood. And I've seen this many times, okay? And it's really an important thing. And then the third story I want to give you is a Buddhist story. There's a wonderful story about two monks who lived together in a monastery for many years. They were great friends. Then they died within a few months of one another. One of them got reborn in the heavenly realms. The other monk got reborn as a worm in a dung pile. Now you might say, after all his dedication as a monk, that's nothing. We can't see what came before in the karmic imprints, okay? The one in heaven was having a wonderful time in the heavenly realms, enjoying all the pleasures, but he started thinking about his friend. I wonder where my old mate has gone. So he scanned realm after realm after realm, could not see any trace. So he looked in the realm of the animals, and then he found, and the realm of the insects. And there he found him reborn as a worm in a dung pile. Wow, he thought, I'm going to help my friend. I'm going down there to that dung pile and taking up to the heavenly realm so he can enjoy these beautiful pleasures that we learned about as monks together. So he went down to the dung pile and called his mate, and the little worm wriggled out and said, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm your friend from the past life. We used to be monks together, and I've come to take you to a wonderful realm where life is really blissful." But the worm said, "Go away, get lost. But I'm your friend, and I really want you to come to these beautiful realms." But the worm said, "No, thank you. I'm quite happy here in my dung pile. Please go away." Then the monk thought, well, if I could just grab hold of him and take him up so he could see what he's missing there, that would be good. So he grabbed hold of the worm and started tugging at him. And the harder he tugged, the harder that worm clung to his pile of dung. Now, we really, a lot of us cling to our pile of dung. I watch people. We are much more comfortable with all the deluded thoughts that we have because we've been doing them for so long. They've become habitual. That is how we think and what we do. And we are so used to being pulled into that dung pile that we actually feel more comfortable there. That's the sad part. At least when you know that it's not, that it's a negative, that you're creating more negative karmic imprints, it's different. And Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, who's a very great master, was a great master, said, habitual, repetitive karmic imprints are like the smell of camphor. Even when washed away, a faint odor lingers. Now, this is so important when you start looking at yourself, because he's saying there's always something there, some part that remains in it. And Minja Dorje also did a very interesting, also a master in his book, The Joy of Living. He said, when he visited the West in the beginning, he said he began to realize that when the pace of external or material progress exceeded the development of inner knowledge, people seem to suffer deep emotional conflicts without any internal method of dealing with them. An abundance of material items provides such a variety of external distractions that people lose the connection to their inner lives. So important. So in other words, the human habitual, intellectual, stimulated. I mean, sometimes when I look at this technology that's going on, I just wonder about it. But when I read people lose the connection to their inner lives, I then said to myself, hello, coronavirus. Hello. Okay, what are you doing here? And have we learned about you? No, we've got some vaccines. I'm going to talk about the coronavirus in terms of karmic imprints just now, because I really think it's so important. Because last night, I was just going to go and meditate, and I was fixing a few things, and I just switched on the news. So first it was India, okay? So I watched a few of these funeral processions and things like that, and I'm crying like a baby. Then the news went off India onto Myanmar, and I'm watching Myanmar, and I'm watching these people with their three fingers up, walking, walking, walking. Now, apparently, there are already about 800 of them that have been shot in cold blood in their heads, but they're still going for it. They won't stop. So I cried again. And then the scene changed, and then it was in Israel, watching this disaster that actually happened in Israel, with the Lag BaOmer festival, where 100,000 people had, I'm sure you all saw it, 100,000 people had gathered together for the festival, and one of the ramps collapsed, and people were killed underneath. I think 45 people died, and many, many, many were injured in this thing. And so I cried again, because they showed all the funerals of these parents burying their children and everything. And I cried again. And when I do cry like that, and then I come and meditate, I'm not looking so much at the external situation. I'm looking at what is really happening on this planet. We're in an age of degeneration. If we do not wake up and change our inner being, if we do not do that, heaven knows what's going to happen. But I know that for the 10 minutes I watched the television, I was crying. Okay. And I just thought, where have we gone wrong? Now, karmic imprints provide, I'll give you a chance to talk in a minute, provide a fascinating tale, especially the habitual ones, and the understanding of habitual karmic momentums goes deeper and deeper. It's really a very deeper, especially for the imprints that have followed us for many, many, many lifetimes. And we'll talk about the subtle ones. It's easy to say, well, I'm not a drug addict, and I'm not this, and I'm not that, and I haven't killed people. But those subtle ones, that self-criticism, that self-denial, the imprints that keep on going like that, are really, we have to look at them. And I want to take, if necessary, 2 sessions, because I've got a lot of material, as I always have, unfortunately, but I've always got so much material, okay? And I want to discuss the tug of war when we go on a spiritual path, and between these habitual imprints, which have become second nature to us, and the beckoning of this awakened mind, which is already inside you, which sees everything in a totally different light, and the COVID, which I want to talk about in a moment as well. You cannot imagine, in all my counseling for the last 50 years, how many times I've heard and how many times I hear every day, okay, but Melanie, this is who I am. This is what I'm like. I've always behaved like this. My whole family suffers from depression. My gran had breast cancer and my mom had it. So obviously I'm going to have it. You don't know how many times I hear these comments all the time. And then I make them repeat. I mean, you can ask anybody who's been to me. They say, she makes you repeat things, because I make them repeat to me. Like, for example, this is how I always used to behave, respond, or act. So I make them put used to, or I've chosen to respond like this, or I allow this person to make me feel this way or do this to me. Now, it's interesting because people who've been with me for a long time, they go, Melanie, look at this and look at that and look at the other. And then they go, I allowed them to do it to me. They already do it automatically. So I'm making a karmic imprint to actually change that very, very much, okay? And it's very interesting. Now, Mimi, Marion, I had a dream about you. I mean, who knows why I had it just before this group. I had it at the very 11th hour of my sleep state. And I have these vivid dreams. I'm in it. And I can tell you, Mim, that I was holding my breath, okay, in this dream. Now, what happened in the dream that I had just before I woke up was that on my bed, you know, my dogs always get onto the bed and they've got these warm, furry blankets that go around them. So when I looked in the soft blanket, I saw there was a lioness in her. Lying in there, there was a lioness on my bed. She was absolutely tame. I wasn't afraid of her and she wasn't afraid of me, and she was there and I was aware she was there, but she wasn't fazing me in any way. And it's very important because many of the masters talk about the lion's roar. Okay, so it's really important. Anyway, the next scenario, Mim, you are in the dream and I'm in the car and I'm driving and you are coming to get into the car when suddenly the lioness awakens, and she's big. She looked so small in my thing, which was also significant. She stands right next to you. There's the door's open between you and this huge lion, okay, lioness. And you look at me, and I'm looking at the scenario, and I'm thinking to myself, one wrong move, and she's going to pounce on you, okay? And you were amazing. You didn't move your physical body. You didn't move. You just looked at her, and I looked, and inside I'm saying, let her get in the car, let her get in the car, let her get in the car. And there you stood, just viewing her. She did nothing. She seemed quite cool, and you stood there. You were absolutely assessing when would be the right moment to get in the car. And I woke up. I didn't see if you got in the car. Okay. But the point is, Mim, it was the most wonderful dream when I reflected on it. Because I thought with all your work you've been doing on your spiritual path and all your training, you were totally focused. You could say symbolically, you were totally focused. You did not react, which is what we do with our karmic imprints. You just stared at that lion, assessing in your mind when would be, if you could have her under your control, then you could just slowly get in the car and come. And you know, that's what we're all doing. And I was driving the car and you were going to get in the car. So you just about in the motor car. Okay, you're right here. You just got. But what was so important in this dream was how focused your mind was. And that's what we learn in meditation, how to make our minds focused, not because that's the object, not because calm abiding is the object of the meditation, but because then we can look into the mind and see this whole nature of mind that exists in us as opposed to your human part of your mind. So I'm actually very, very happy with that dream. And I had absolute confidence that you were going to bring it to fruition. And I really loved the way you just stared at it and assessed, because that is what your Buddhism's done for you. I don't know if you want to comment, Mim, but it was really a hair-raising dream. I mean, when I woke up, I was shivering and my heart was beating like this because I didn't want the lion to eat you. You know, what do you think about that?
Well, thank you for the dream. I just, I feel it's very encouraging that, you know, that focus, which I am trying to maintain, and that one's making progress. So that's encouraging. Thank you.
And the lion's roar is actually, you know, they say when the lion roars, all the other animals fade away, which is so interesting because the lion's roar symbolizes your awakened spiritual mind. And when you get to that awakened spiritual mind, yes, it's a long road. Yes, it's difficult. And any of you newies can ask me any questions, what you want to know today. But when you actually get that mind where you have that lion's roar, then the lion is tame. And it was just touch and go, you know. But she never roared. She was not in any way disturbed, and I didn't think she was going to pounce on you, but I would have felt better if you were right in the vehicle. Okay, so it was a beautiful experience, you know, very nerve-wracking, and I'm glad it happened with you, you know. So does anybody want to actually want to say anything, or should I just go on a little more and then we're going to do a meditation? Anybody want to say anything urgently or ask anything? Okay. So I know it's important to realize that human beings often, not always, have the choice to follow that habitual karmic imprint over and over again in so many different but similar situations, or to change direction. And when I say change, I mean if we can't change that situation, which sometimes we can't, we're in it, and I'll explain it just now, we can definitely change our view and our reaction to it, even if you can't change the situation. So I think with this more subtle imprints, the addictions are different because we know, and people are always trying to resolve their addictions. But with the subtle imprints, we often not even aware how deep they are. We're not aware of how deep they are and how they've been tripping us up for lifetimes. Things like being judgmental, being more comfortable when badly treated. I know lots of people are more comfortable when people treat them badly. Pride, having pride, like, don't you dare do this to me. You apologize to me. I like when I see parents going to the child, how can you speak to me like that? You apologize to me, otherwise I'm not speaking to you, whatever, whatever, whatever. You know what? Children today are not buying our rubbish. They're not buying, you just stay as I want you. Let me tell you something, even my grown-up children never buy anything I want. And their children do it to them as well. Okay, so the thing is that it's a very interesting thing because we've trained our children to be forthright, to be outspoken. And then when they don't listen, we have the pride to say, how dare you talk to me like that? I would never have spoken to my mother like that. Okay, it's times have changed. And self-criticism is such a big one. And neurotic obsessions, like people who really need to be in control. I once had a girl who said to me, I've taken medication more for my obsessive compulsive behavior. She said, oh, and my brother is far worse than I am, and the whole family is like that. But now I'm controlling things much better. I don't have to do them quite as obsessively as I did them before. I mean, that is an imprint. That's an imprint. And because you're born into the family, which I'm going to teach you about, it's very, very important to understand how we have to become aware, which is what we do with our nature of mind. So I think that I'm going to define what a karmic imprint is. I want to talk about coronavirus and the karmic imprints, but I'm very happy to take this over 2 sessions because there's a lot of material and there's a lot of things people can learn. But if you're ready to meditate, we can meditate. But first, let me ask if anyone wants to say anything or comment or ask. I'll wait a bit. Anybody? Newies, please ask. You're really welcome. And never think your questions are too basic, too simple. There's never too much simplicity. The simpler, the better. The more questions you have, absolutely to do it. Anybody?
Melanie?
Yes, please.
I have seen over the years how my relationships, especially with the husband, has created so many issues in my life because of these habitual tendencies, and also giving him the power to treat you badly. And in spite of the loss of my children, I found that still I tend to want to go back to talking to him because I believe it's a deluded state. I believe that I would feel better, but inevitably I'm hurt. You know, I see it, and you're always telling me. But now, when you said maybe we should change our view and look at it differently, perhaps that may help. I don't know.
It helps tremendously because you see, when you see the repetitions, and I'll come to explain it when I explain in depth the karmic imprints and the impelling consciousness and the consciousness of the impelled result, I will explain it to you. But you see, we habitually are looking, especially where you have several people in your life that either put you down or challenge you or treat you like a child or humiliate you or whatever they're actually doing. When you have the repetitive nature, you've got to look in the mirror, and I'll explain it, because then it means your imprint has created this scenario. And you need to clean it up. And we'll talk about how to clean it up. Because the thing is, if these imprints go on and on and on, it's really important. Because when we die, as I'll show you, those imprints are in your alaya consciousness. And that's the only level of ordinary consciousness that goes with you from lifetime to lifetime. So therefore, if you are still responding in the same way to a situation, it's your imprint. The person is the secondary cause. The primary cause is your own imprint. And when you begin to understand this, when you have a different view, you're saying, it's wonderful that I'm getting put down. Okay, not to that extent, but it's very good that I'm being put down because I'm being tested to change my full-on response to everything that is there. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And it's so important. So if you especially have repetitive things, I have a hard time from lots and lots and lots of people around me, but I'm always looking in the mirror to see what the karmic imprint is. Because when we really understand that, we can change it, we change our view, we change our perspective. It's very important. I'll go into that in more detail.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone? Are you all happy? Or are you shy? I'm very happy if you ask questions, really, because then I know where your minds are going and I can direct the teaching there. Okay, everybody. Okay, so let's do a little meditation now, just for a few minutes, and we'll just do it. And for those that are new, what we always start with is calm, abiding meditation, because calm, abiding meditation is definitely not the goal, okay? Calm, abiding meditation is just the beginning, where we are calming our minds completely so that we can look into them. I can just say this to all of you, that when you start to experience that nature of mind, first of all, it is what makes us cry at every single situation. And tomorrow night, I'm going to talk about finding the true purpose of life. I'm also going to do a beginner's one. And if any of you want to come, please do, because it's important to actually, to really understand these things. So for these 2 weeks, I'm going to do more beginners lectures than some of the quite difficult stuff that I have been doing in the past. But it's really important when you look at meditation, that what you are doing, if you're looking into a pool that is in turmoil or an ocean that is in turmoil, you can't see in it. So the first point is to clear the mind, not to clear it of all your thoughts and all your feelings, because then people come and say, I can't meditate. The thoughts come. It's not for that reason. It's to clear it so that the thoughts and the feelings have no effect on you. So in other words, that's what we're training the mind, because normally when you're sitting and you have a thought, oh, I've got to go to the doctor after this. Then you go, then from that little thought you go, oh, what if he says this and this and this? Oh, I remember when this and this, and we start making a whole big mountain out of a little molehill of a thought. Now, what we do in meditation, in calm abiding meditation called shamatha or shine, we draw the mind back. It's not that you have to clear the mind. I mean, obviously, the less thoughts you have, the better, but your thoughts can come. And in the beginning, when you do meditation, the thoughts come fast and furiously. But the most important thing is to bring the mind back to the focus and not go after the thoughts and feelings. That's all. The thoughts and feelings are of the same essence as the mind. And so we don't have to do anything about them. We just have to allow all the thoughts and feelings and bring our mind back to the focus. So we'll use the breath today because there are a lot of new people. And those of you who don't need the breath anymore, or who want to use the sky, that's also fine as a focus. But I want you to just get into your meditation posture. So if you can, sit on a cushion with your legs crossed, one in front of another, or half lotus or lotus if you are a good yogi. And you are, but your legs, if you are on a chair, your feet are flat on the ground, and your spinal column is straight, and your chin is a little bit tucked in, your shoulders are back, your hands are right over left with the thumbs touching, and your tongue's at the top of your palate, and your eyes are open, never closed. Because number one, your eyes are the gateway to being able to see what you need to see. And when you really train yourself, those eyes become a gateway. And secondly, when you close your eyes, you don't want to bliss out so that you can't meditate wherever you are. You want to be able to meditate. If you're sitting in a waiting room and there's a noise, there's no problem. So you got your eyes open and nobody can even see that you're meditating. And you're breathing in and out, and in to the count of 3 or 4, and out. And you're just allowing everything to be. You're focusing on the breath. Those of you who have a hard time to do this, you can try and do the 21 breaths of breathing in and out, 1, in and out, 2, and only when you reach 21, without, if you're distracted and your mind goes out into a thought, you have to start from number 1. But the rest of you, just breathing in and out and allowing everything to be, letting everything relax in your body, in your mind, in your talking to yourself. Just stop that incessant inner conversation and just allow everything to be. And when thoughts and feelings come up, we see them as waves in the ocean. Don't touch them. Don't go after them. They'll just come back to the ocean, which is the essence of your mind. And I was listening to a tape by Dajjum Rinpoche on how to meditate. And he said, when you sit and you just allow everything to be, the mind is pacified. Oh, I love that. It's gone round and round in my head. The mind is pacified. So the mind, especially the human part of the mind, going after everything, on and on and on, is so tired. So when you stop and open your mind and just allow everything to be, bringing it back to the breath, the mind is pacified, like you give the baby a dummy. Everything is pacified. And you just go back to the breath, in and out, allowing everything to be, allowing everything to dissolve into its essence, and keep on being aware of when your mind is distracted, when it's going after a thought, and quickly bring it back to the breath. And if we do this practice a good couple of times a day, just 5 minutes is enough just to stabilize your mind. You can do it for 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes during your morning, even at work, 5 minutes later, just pacifying your mind and bringing it to a calm, stable state. And when you finish, never forget to dedicate it to all sentient beings. So you just say, from my beautiful meditation, may it benefit all beings, which is really important. Five minutes a few times a day, you'll find a huge difference in your mind. You'll find, like Mimi, what I saw you in the dream, you'll find that it is amazing how your mind focuses very easily. So let's come back. I'm going to come back to coronavirus, and let's come back to the definition of a karmic imprint, and butt in if you want to know anything, okay? A lot of you that I know from before, like you, Renee, Molly, you did a lot of karma, but now the karmic stuff is very much deeper and very much more profound, let's say, than what we knew before. We thought it was cause and effect. It's not that. It's really much deeper than that. But you would have had some understanding of it. So what is a karmic imprint? Every time we think, feel, act, an imprint is left. I'll tell you what the Alaya consciousness is in a moment, but in a particular level of your human consciousness, not your primordial consciousness, which is a much higher level, in your human consciousness, okay? The more profound the thought, feeling, or action, the deeper the imprint. And of course, we're talking a lot about the negative imprints, but of course, we have so many beautiful positive imprints, which give us so much opportunity, open portal to unity with our nature of mind, okay? And then when the causes and conditions, it's not a simple thing. When the causes and conditions ripen in this or even in a future lifetime, then the imprint will manifest. Now, this is so important because if you look at a rainbow might really be wanting to manifest after a storm. But if it hasn't got every single condition that causes that beautiful color in the sky, it won't manifest. If one is missing, it won't manifest. So with us, with the superficial imprints, like we have a lot of superficial imprints, we may not even notice their ripening or other actions other actions that we do might balance out that small karmic imprint. Like, let's say we said a nasty word to somebody, it's going to make a deep imprint, but we might be so kind to a lot of people, and that might just wipe that little superficial imprint away. Okay. And with superficial imprint, we may not even notice their ripening. Okay. We may not notice them at all, but we are really looking at the repetitive karmic imprints that now have what we call a habit momentum. And they become easier to manifest, okay? And we might think, this is how I am. I'm always shouting, I'm always screaming, I'm always nervous, I'm always insecure. I hear people saying that to me. I'm always insecure, okay, or something like that. I mean, it's unbelievable when people, how conditioned we get this. And all of this is relative. None of this touches your true nature of mind. It's all relative. It doesn't touch your true thing. So when we look at, I've said this story before, but it's a very important one. A man was passing some elephants at a circus ground and was confused by the fact that these huge creatures were being held by a rope tied to their legs. It was obvious that the elephants could at any time break away from the ropes that they were tied to, but for some reason they didn't. And he saw the trainer nearby and asked how these beautiful, magnificent animals just stood there with one rope on their leg, which they could easily pull off. The trainer explained that when they were very young and much smaller, the same size rope was used to tie them. And at that age, it was binding for them. They couldn't take it off. As they grow up, they are so conditioned to believe that the rope still holds them if they try to break free. So these gigantic creatures, so much stronger than the rope that tied them, limited their present abilities by the mindset of the past. And we do this all the time. We are so conditioned. If we had a mother who said to us all the time, you'll never amount to anything, or you're so stupid, or, I don't know what you're going to be, or I remember one friend of mine, she used to say when she introduced people to her girls, she used to say, and this is the little one. What did she used to say? This is the little one that's sweet. Something like that. Like she's not going to get very far. Something to that effect. This is my sweet little girl. Now, what does that do? I know somebody that I had in counseling where the mother phoned me beforehand and said, my daughter is so depressed and she finds it hard to communicate and I don't know what to do with her, etc., etc. So when I went downstairs to meet this little girl, it was before Corona time. She wasn't such a little girl. She was already 18 or 19 or whatever old she was. When I went down to meet her, I was waiting for this timid little girl who couldn't talk to me. And she went, hello, Melanie, how are you? And then she sat down and proceeded to tell. And I said, I'm just wondering, because what your mother told me about you is not at all how you are. Now, always reminded her of this. The message conditions in you. And if you had these conditioned messages, know that that was your imprint attracting you to that mother. And now you've got to work that imprint through. You've not got to hear those messages. They no longer bind you anymore. Okay. It's very important. So if we look at the relative life, okay, keep comparing it to the ultimate life. Now, relative just means a very simple definition. The way we perceive things to be through our distorted karmic vision. The way we perceive things to be, I added in with our distorted karmic vision. The way We think things are just what I've told you. Whereas ultimate is the way things really are. Now, when you take these two things together, that the relative must not be believed like this. The relative is just what your particular imprints have done for you in this life. And you have to stop and go to the ultimate. That's what all of this learning is about. It's really, really important. And I use two little words which are so important for people. I've got lots of my little techniques, but my words, and I tell parents whose children have got anger problems and everything, when they say, I hate you, you this or that, you go, you mean you're cross with me. You mean are my two words. You just reframe it so that you look at another way. So when people say, I can't do it, Melanie, I don't have it in me, I go, you mean you're afraid to try in case you fail. I don't know if this is hitting any buttons for anybody, but here the karmic imprint is failure and self-criticism and fear. It's absolute fear. Anyone want to comment or say anything? Yes, Damika.
Yeah. So I'm in a funny situation. I talked to you about it. So I think I'm trying to understand or maybe analyzing my karmic imprint. So coming from a big family,
You tell
living,
that she had a Buddhist mother. What a great
yeah,
karmic.
yeah,
She had a Buddhist mother. Why didn't I? Okay.
yeah, she was amazing. She passed on now. Anyway, so coming from a big family, Buddhist background, all that I still have huge impact in my life. But as I said, I've been living in so many different houses all my life because we left Sri Lanka in South Africa, fourth house. And my husband is based in Zim now. We've been in this place for 2 years. And the next two houses are being bought by the construction company and they are building apartments. So the whole thing is going on. I told my landlady knew about it and she improved the security measures because I'm alone here with my son and the maid. And then we are leaving Johannesburg next December. So I really, sometimes I feel I haven't got the energy to look for another house and move everything. Some, and I can see my human psychic mind analyzing relative level, and then I go into a deeper level. I can meditate on this noise. I can come out with full of compassion. Even the workers this morning, the guy was on the tree right next to my bedroom. So I went to talk to him because the electric fence is on. I said, shall I switch it off for you? I can work at that level when I really go into the other level, almost like ultimate awareness. But most of the time, I'm just analyzing, judging. I'm not even angry with the landlady. I do feel for her. She's an amazing person, really. One of the best landladies I ever had. She doesn't want me to move out and she knows she won't be able to find someone. And then last week I was crying. I was so emotional, and Alex is out of the country. And then this week I have come to terms with it.
Yay. Yeah.
I can sit there, just not so much mindfulness, but being so present with this noise. It's
I
okay.
unbelievable. And you know what? Your karmic imprints are clearing. Now, clearly, one of the karmic imprints you had to overcome in previous lives was attachment, which 99% of us have to overcome our attachments, okay, to children, to families, to houses, to material comforts, to everything. Very clear. So what happens with you is you get born to a Buddhist mother who's not attached to too much, she's okay about everything. And I remember when she was going to die, whatever, you were fussing, and she said, just let it be, something like that. So you had that, and then you're forced to move and move and move and move and move, never be able to settle. Now, isn't that an exquisite lesson in non-attachment?
This is how I see it now. Because when we moved in here, I said, this is it, Alex. I'm not moving the house again. We are here for 3 years. Very nice place, so peaceful. I can meditate, I can work from home. And then
way are you ever going to be attached to a place? It's your particular imprint. And clearly it comes from an imprint we were more attached previously. And many of us, as we go, I think all of us like me, with all the children being overseas and grandchildren being overseas, I've had to learn the lesson of non-attachment, okay? So it's really, really important that we learn the lesson, and I'll come to that in a moment. But I mean, thank you for sharing that, because it's so important, because how many of us are just obsessed with all the things around us and fixing it up and doing it all the time and putting so much energy, and then suddenly we have to move and we're devastated and we can't and we don't have the strength. Never the same house. I mean, Patrul Rinpoche used to say, I'm a wandering vagabond. So every time you can't move, say, I'm a wandering vagabond. Now let me look in this house and see how many things I can absolutely get rid of and bring myself to a basic minimalistic state, I mean, I think it's such an important thing, because I think attachment is one of our deepest karmic habits.
Melanie, to marry to Alex, he is more Buddhist than me. He has no attachment. He's got no material things. When I met him long time ago in Sri Lanka, he said, Rolling Stones never gather moss. He can pack up the suitcase and just go. Even now, amazing. So I look at him. He's got a bicycle to do the cycling. Car is here. So and I look at him and I'm thinking, gosh, this is something definitely karmic imprint.
Definitely. And thank you for sharing. And it's beautiful because we all have it. So let's just look at what we call in Tibetan Sem, which is the human part of the mind, S-E-M-S in Tibetan, the human part of the mind, versus Ni, N-Y-E, which is your nature of mind. If we look at these, I mean, the human mind is 1 grain of sand. It's part of the nature of mind, but it's 1 grain of sand. And what we're doing here is we're looking, first of all, at the ordinary level of consciousness. Now, what the Buddha taught was that the ordinary level of consciousness, there are 8 ordinary levels of consciousness, okay? And if we haven't developed and seen the primordial consciousness, which is our real level of consciousness, which when we die, only 1 tiny part of the human consciousness goes with us, the rest dies. And then we pick it up again in another lifetime. Not the same stuff, but the imprints. But if we believe that everything is our present consciousness, so let's look at the 8 levels that the Buddha taught. 5 sense consciousnesses, that's eyes, ears, nose, smell, or what eyes, ears, nose, touch, and taste. Okay. Now, I want you to look at those, because it's quite interesting, those consciousnesses, because it's not the eyes that see, It's the visual consciousness behind the eyes that actually see the visions. It's the auditory consciousness behind the ears that hear things. So when we look at the senses, it's so interesting when you look at coronavirus as a common imprint to the whole world, that the taste goes and the smell goes and the breath. You can't take in enough air, and then all the organs that are affected. We'll talk about that just now. But those 5 sense consciousnesses never judge anything. They just see, they hear, they taste, they feel, but they don't judge anything. But the 6th consciousness is called your mind consciousness, and that's your human mind consciousness. And that judges what it sees. So it starts by saying, this is awful, this is great. I want this, I want yet, just this is awful, this is great. This is terrible, this is nice. This is colorful, this is black and white. It judges whatever the 5 sense consciousnesses see, okay? And the sense consciousnesses don't judge, but the mind judges. I don't like it, I like it. I'm averse to this, I want more of this. It's never enough. That's the mind consciousness. The 7th consciousness is called what they call in Buddhism the klesha, K-L-E-S-H-A, the klesha consciousness. That's the I, me, myself, all the poisons. I am important. I want this. I don't like this vision I've seen. I want more of this. I desire that. I don't want any of that in my life. On and on and on and on, okay? And then the 8th consciousness is called your alaya consciousness, okay? And the alaya consciousness goes from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. So when we use only these 8 levels of consciousness in our life, which 90% of people do, and which I want to relate later, even if I can't do today, to coronavirus, then we are totally oblivious that there's another level of absolutely primordial consciousness that exists within us that we don't even know. That the ordinary consciousness is really the primordial consciousness, which is completely different to our ordinary consciousness, okay? And when it's the reverse side, and if we wake up to that primordial consciousness, which we'll talk about, then your view changes, your vision changes, everything in your life changes. It's so important to understand this. It all changes, okay? So why don't we? Now at death, all the levels dissolve of your ordinary consciousness. They all dissolve at death. But the alaya consciousness doesn't. And of course, the primordial consciousness is absolutely and totally manifest to you. It's a completely different level of consciousness. But 90% of people don't even see the primordial consciousness. They just get catapulted with the karmic things. So if your repetitive karmic imprints have not been dealt with, they deepen and catapult us into circumstances where they can ripen even during the womb or at birth. They can actually ripen, okay? And when the primordial consciousness reveals itself, we won't even know it, okay? We won't know it at all. And of course, that's the negative imprints. But when we look at the positive momentums of imprints, like musicians that get born and at the age of 3, they can already play the instrument, sing, whatever they can do. Artists, writers, and then of course, beautiful qualities like generosity, compassion, inner beauty, service. I mean, you can see these in little kids, their karmic momentum, where kids are pretty selfish. But you'll find one little child will go and take his jersey off and put it around someone else in the class. It's already a momentum which comes with it, with a positive momentum. So if we look at the wheel of life, which I'll talk a little bit only about, which is relative, it's the wheel that goes round. We call it samsara, the wheel that goes round and round and round. Okay. The wheel has two levels that impel us. Okay, that impel us. One is called the impelling consciousness, the impelling consciousness. Now, this is the seed in your alaya consciousness, which propels you to the next rebirth. It's called the impelling consciousness. It propels you into a completely new birth. Okay, and remember that when you die, the primordial consciousness comes before the impelling consciousness. So if you recognize, we know your primordial consciousness, then the impelling consciousness will be, you'll be liberated before the impelling consciousness has a chance to do whatever it has to do. So the first one is the impelling consciousness. And the second C is called the consciousness of the impelled result. The consciousness of the impelled result. And that leads us to the particular birthplace of that life where all the conditions will come together. Now, what we're learning here is, I was thinking to myself, if you were going to an amazing, fashionable event and you had this beautiful dress, and by mistake, the dress was hanging inside out in your cupboard. You were in such a hurry, you didn't look. You just put the dress on inside out. Okay, so you could see all the seams, you could see the label, you didn't even realize you did. And somebody says, your dress is inside out. And you go to the bathroom and you're horrified. You've seen all these people. You've shown all the stitching, all the garments, the labels. You didn't even know your beautiful dress was inside out. Now, it's like that. What we are is inside out of what we really are. What we show is inside out of what we really are. We show these levels of consciousness and it's inside out. When we look at the levels of consciousness, we think that's what they are. We don't know that actually there's the most beautiful part inside us. When people say, this relationship's terrible, I'm not excited in it, I say, go on a spiritual path. You'll be excited every day and you'll be so happy to have a spouse that looks after you and keeps everything together. You'll have the most exciting life of your dreams. Don't worry about it. Nothing external. And that beautiful Buddhist tale, which says, one day a young Buddhist on his journey home came to the banks of a wide river, staring hopelessly at the great obstacle in front of him. He pondered for hours, how is he going to get across this wide barrier? Just as he was going to give up his pursuit to continue his journey, he saw a great teacher on the other side of the river. The young Buddhist yells over to the teacher, "Oh, wise one, can you please tell me how to get to the other side of the river?" The teacher ponders for a moment, looks up and down the river and yells back, "My son, you are on the other side." Okay. You can laugh at that. You are on the other side. Just depends where you're looking. Okay. Now, if you think of this, how much in our lives we do not know. So from the impelling consciousness, we land up in a family that will bring out the deep habitual patterns, neurotic patterns, as Taisitu loves to call it, your neurotic fixations, he always says, he loves that word, bring out the deep habitual, but neurotic and psychotic, unfortunately, like abandonment, anger, insecurity, abuse, alcohol and drugs, fanaticism, persecution, overprotection, That also doesn't help you. It's a negative imprint. Low self-esteem, blaming, illness, fear, control and domination, overdriven with success, and on and on and on. And of course, the positive ones might bring you to a wealthy family and to a caring family, or a special career like musicians, to a family that have long fingers so you can play the piano as soon as you get there if you were a great pianist, or masters to a family where their service continues. They see them. I mean, when you think of these mothers of these beautiful tulkus, they come and fetch them at 5 years old to go back to their monasteries. And these mothers have to give them up. And they give them up gladly to go back, because they know this child is born through me, not of me. And I'm privileged to have that. And now I have to give him back to the community. And they do it very easily, I'm sure, not without their own pain. So as we act day by day, we continuously imprinting and conditioning our stream of consciousness. The physical imprints become the body that we have in the next lifetime. So when people go, I was born fat, I've got this ugly thing, I'm always battling my weight. It's your own imprint. You're born with the body the way you treated your body in previous life. That's the body you create. Your verbal imprints become your quality of speech in the next lifetime. So when people stutter and they have speech impediments and everything, it's because somewhere they haven't used their speech for benefiting beings. And so they may not get that speech. But when you look at how these masters use their speech, it's unbelievable. So the verbal imprints become the quality of speech. And the mental imprints become the mind in the future. So just to say, yesterday, we were with this old aunt of my husband's, and I really care very deeply for her. She's in her 90s, and she was telling me certain things about when she dies, she wants this or this or this to happen with her family. We were talking and everything. And then as we were going to the car, I just put my hand in hers and I said, you know, when you're ready, let me teach you a few things about dying. She looked at me. Now she knows that I always talk like this. She knows that I'm on my own journey and everything. Let me teach you a few things so you can die awake. So she said to me, why? Why would I learn that? She said, I'll know what to do when I die. Okay. Now, you know, that statement, you can take it and attribute it to 98% of the population. You think when you die, you just know what to do. Just understand that if you train your mind completely, when you come to death, you will know how to recognize, know who you really are. And the training is absolutely imperative, because otherwise, the impelling consciousness, the karmic imprints that are habitual, catapult us into yet another life of all the similar circumstances. Now, Kasturi, if you look at your life, it's full of a lot of loss. It's similar to Damika's, because it's asking you not to be attached to all the loss that you've been through. Yours too, Robin. Doesn't mean you don't feel the pain. That's not what I'm saying. It means you accept that that loss is really, really, really just something that never belonged to you in the first place, okay? Nothing belongs to us. And I ponder this a lot. It's just all our attachment. Now, I want to give you the 3 most important points of working with the karmic imprints, but I think I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to just open for a few minutes, because what I want to do next week is I want to really take the wheel of life in samsara. I'm not going to give you long teaching on it. I just want to take it from the perspective, because a lot of you have had that teaching, of the karmic imprints and how we go from the one life to the next life, and how we get a chance in the middle of the wheel to change and get right off the wheel, not to carry on with that big wheel that goes round and round and round, learning the lessons, acting with conscious intention, learning to read your imprints, your own tapestry. You need to read them now. So let me open it. I have so many things to tell you and to teach you on this, but just let me open it. Maybe somebody wants to ask, especially you little newies. Ronnie, who else? I can't even see them all. Galaxy, I don't know who that is. Any of you, just let me see who else we've got here. Viam, you've been quite a bit, so you should be okay. Any of you, just tell me, yes. Please tell me your name again, Renee's daughter.
Lauren.
Lauren.
Lauren, sorry, it's very soft. Can you hear me? My computer's not great.
I can hear you perfectly, and I'm so glad you've got your mom here, because I loved her always, all the years that she learned. I'm so happy. We bumped in the supermarket the other day, which is most unlikely. And there we were, Melanie, Renee. And she said, "Are you still teaching?" Yes. And here she is. Yay. That's so good. Go on, Laura.
So I'm obviously very new and taking a lot of this in, and I think I needed to percolate to really understand it all. But I think maybe a very simplistic, it might be a simplistic question, but I'm trying to understand how to recognize your karmic imprints.
Yeah.
And I wanted to check with you. I've kind of written down here. It sounds like it's something that is obviously there's positive and negative, and the positive you can be conscious of to use it to your benefit. But I think more what I'm understanding is that it's something that is habitual, that is has a disabling narrative, that what one needs to do with it is to recognize it, and I'm not quite sure how one does recognize it. Those are the 2 things in my mind that I'm understanding it to be. It's disabling and it's repetitive. And then once one understands it, is to accept it and face it so that you can let it go in order to grow.
But you know what? What you're asking, if you're coming in at nursery school, you're asking a matric outcome. Okay, you're in nursery school, you're asking for a matric outcome. Okay, which I really understand. I don't blame you. And you know what? I just want to tell you that there are practices called leap over. Okay, leap over, which means if you already have it in you and had done the learning, it's quick. That's why I decided to do these more beginners groups. Okay, you will learn if you come on a regular basis, and that's what I always say to people. I teach every Monday morning and every Tuesday evening. Okay, and tomorrow night, I'm really going to do the purpose of life, which is really useful. So try and come if you can. But the point is, if you start looking at your imprints, you just start with a little bit of awareness. You start with your meditation and you start with a little bit of awareness. Now, in the Buddhist practice of philosophy, there are many very, very basic practices that you can do. And I am totally willing to help anybody to learn to do those very basic practices, okay? So there's no problem with that. And as you do the practices, you start to change from that ordinary consciousness to your primordial consciousness. Your primordial consciousness is completely different, because in your ordinary consciousness, if you take an example, if you've got anger, okay, anger is no tangible thing. Actually, anger in its primordial state is called mirror-like wisdom. We'll talk about it next time. But the mirror-like wisdom is that if you've got angry imprints, like I've been helping a few children with anger lately that have got really bad anger tantrums all the time and things like that, they come in with it. And if you look at anger, anger is really a mirror. The anger is inside you. The mirror is the person who's giving you a hard time or causing you to feel angry. And over time, if you keep feeling angry, you have to start asking, what is the mirror showing me of my own imprint? That's what you're trying to look at when you look at anger, okay? And so when you actually understand anger as mirror-like wisdom, it starts dissolving of its own accord. And that's how. So when you say, how do I become aware? When you develop with all the practices and things like that, you start becoming aware. And then you can start reading, especially the repetitive situations. Because let's say you had an authoritarian father, and then you had an authoritarian teacher, and then you had an authoritarian boss, and then you have an authoritarian kind of husband. Then you know, hey, hang on a moment. I've got this imprint. I better really look at this, okay? It really means that somewhere you abused your abilities and now you're coming back to learn the lesson repetitively. But it takes a little bit of time, La, you know? And like, for instance, I remember your family when your father died. I mean, that's how long we go back. How many years is it?
How many years ago did they die?
28.
28 years ago. I mean, now in my old age, I remember people from all their traumas and everything. I mean, from that, you obviously, and your mom has a lot of imprints about loss, okay, about not being able to make her life in a particular way that she wants to, the mold that she wants to. And when I met you, it was wonderful to see how relaxed you were about everything, you know, and how you just came in, and that's what it's about. When we're controlling everything to try and become secure. And suddenly one day we go, what am I doing? I don't need to do this anymore. I need to actually let be, let go, allow things to develop, because from your nature of mind, things evolve spontaneously, not with your planning and plotting and all of that. And it's something we learn so deeply. So beautiful that you asked that question. It's not at all simple, but clearly you always go ahead of everybody. Where they are, you want to already know, you know, what it is and how it is. And that's great. Use your inquiring mind to say, let me go to a beautiful place where I allow this nature of mind to manifest in the way that it needs to manifest. And it's such a wonderful thing when I hear people planning and plotting with this coronavirus and everything, and I go, I'm not doing a single plan. I don't know if this vaccine is going to work. It might work with the particular things, but there's something people aren't learning. And I've got some of that material for you. What aren't people learning? And what are we supposed to do with those very world imprints? The whole world has got to learn something.
Now, can I ask you about coronavirus, that you said about loss of sense of taste and smell, and what about on a global scale and all that?
That it will stay.
On a very,
I say, you were talking about, you were going to discuss coronavirus.
Yeah, I will next time. I will do it next time. I'll really discuss it in depth, because I think it's so important. I'm so concern for this planet. And I mean, when I look at those religious festivals, both in India, where they went bathing in the Ganges, and Kasturi tells me the festival, I forget every time, but Mela, what's it called?
It's the Kumbh Mela.
Kumbh Mela. I mean, how do people go thousands and thousands into the water when they haven't been vaccinated? And even in Israel, where a large part of the population are vaccinated, what are they going to a gathering of 100,000 people on top of each other without masks? This is like, for me, the universe is saying, wake up, take responsibility. Taisitu said, we've got to take responsibility for the virus. We created it en masse. We've got to see what we created. And that's the point about the karmic imprint. So listen, everybody, I'm sorry I've got lots of stories and stuff to tell you. It's a long teaching. But what I will do is let's dedicate for all sentient beings. And if any of you want to stay afterwards for a few minutes and ask me things or discuss with me, especially in newies, I will stay with you for a little while afterwards. But Bern, let's just have the dedication prayer. We always dedicate because it means whatever we're doing is for the sake of all sentient beings. So we're doing it in English. Through the virtue of this goodness, may I obtain omniscience and overcome all adversity, thereupon liberating beings from the ocean of existence, which is rocked by the waves of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Sonam die tamche zipane topne nepe tranam pamshene jegana chibala topaye sipe sole dua dro warsho. So I'm staying for anybody that wants to ask.